So before we go ahead, I had some homework to figure out, and I did my homework. So we had a discussion on Daf Chavbet Amud Bet. Just take a moment to try to do some housekeeping here. And the Gemara said, Rav Huna Breid Rav Yeshua. It's about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines in the bottom. So the Gemara said, "Ihadlaka osa mitzvah madlikim in ner l'ner, v'hianacha osa mitzvah ein madlikim in ner l'ner." So machlokas, what is the actual form of the mitzvah of lighting candles? 22B, and on the you have the article there. It's probably the third, fourth article page. You found it, okay? So if you say adlaka osa mitzvah, the actual lighting of the candles, the mitzvah, then you can light from candle to candle. And if hanacha, if you're putting it down afterwards, is the mitzvah, making sure it's there, then you cannot light from there to there. And the Gemara paskins that, by the way, hadlaka osa mitzvah, which means that halachically you could go from candle to candle, but we saw Tosut pointed out that our minhag is that we don't do it. So it's a certain sign of respect. Now, I said I would try to find out, in my understanding, why each of these things are connected. And you have to go back to understand the previous piece of the Gemara talked about the menorah and the Beis Hamikdash. Right. Just kind of remind ourselves there. Mm-hmm. And they would light the menorah, and the problem with the menorah was those candles were set in, or the bowls were not movable. So in order to light from if you assume they're lighting from candle to candle, it must be that they would have to take a chip of wood in the middle to connect them one to the other. So that would be a case of a bizui mitzvah. That would be a problem, bizui mitzvah. And the Gemara says, well, we had an answer that Rav Papa gave of psilot arukot, that there were long wicks. The wicks go from one to the other. So it did not require an intermediary, but they could light it directly from each other. So that Gemara took care of the bizui mitzvah issue, right? It was not a bizui mitzvah. Then the Gemara said, what about the fact that it's going to be a chushim mitzvah? If you light from one candle to the other, you're weakening somehow, I'm not sure, physically, chemically, metaphysically, you're weakening the lighting light. It's going to have less light, less energy into it. And the Gemara gave a very funny response. The Gemara said kasha. The Gemara said kasha, and geblieben by kasha. And then the Gemara says my havalon and goes ahead. So I think what the way the mahalach of the Gemara is, when you have a kasha and you leave it as a kasha, the Gemara says we're not really concerned about it. Okay. So it seems the Gemara is more concerned about the bizui mitzvah, the bizayon of mitzvah, than it is really about a concept of a chushim mitzvah. A chushim mitzvah, even for us, is very hard to understand. Right. If I light from one candle to the other, what really got decreased? How am I weakening it? I understand I have a candle and I take a match or a chip and I go from one to the other. That I understand is a decrease. So that is a bizayon on the level of kedusha. I went from holy to non-holy to holy. So that with understanding that, then it makes everything fall into place. You see, the Gemara really was more concerned that it shouldn't be a bizayon mitzvah, but if I'm going from one mitzvah object to another mitzvah object, it's not such a problem. Oh, kasha, how do we understand it? We're not that concerned about it. Let's go on in my Havei Allah. So this is really what the Rishonim explained. The Rashba explains it, other Rishonim explain it. They say, let's look at the mitzvah now of what Chanukah candles is for us. Not in the Beis Hamikdash. Right. The Beis Hamikdash is clearly hadlaka osa mitzvah. But in our situation, when we light the menorah, there's one of two things. Either lighting it is the mitzvah, or putting it down. If lighting is the mitzvah, if hadlaka osa mitzvah, then you don't need an intermediary. You light the first candle, that's actually the mitzvah. You're taking one mitzvah object, and you're moving it, you take the candle up, and you move it to the next. You move it to the next. Not like the menorah that everything is set in. You can actually move one to the other, theoretically, unless you're using oil. But oil, you could use maybe a candle. I'm not sure how you would do it with oil, but you can actually theoretically move one to the other. So if hadlaka osa mitzvah, without using an intermediary, I can use from one mitzvah to another. We're not concerned about hachasha mitzvah because the Gemara wasn't concerned about it. And bizui mitzvah, it's not a bizui mitzvah. I'm going from one to the other. On the other hand, if I say the mitzvah doesn't really take place until hanacha osa mitzvah, which means I light it, and if I'm standing, if I'm holding it standing, I don't do the mitzvah until I actually put it down, which is what it could be. Then in such a case, when I light one to the other, I'm not lighting from a mitzvah object to another mitzvah object. I'm lighting the first candle perhaps, but the second candle may not be the mitzvah until I actually put it down. So in other words, in this kind of case, if the mitzvah is actually the actual putting it down hanacha, so seeing that hanacha is not the actual mitzvah, lighting from one to the other would be considered more of a bizoy mitzvah from the candle that I lit. Not sure if I got it fully, but I think it's pretty closer to it now than I was last time. So at any rate, this is how the Gemara comes out. So once again, the Gemara's assumption is if you say hadlakos a mitzvah, you can move from candle to candle. If you say hanachos a mitzvah, then you cannot light from candle to candle. Okay. A couple of footnotes to this. I gave you a handout a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe last week. This page, I'm not sure if anyone still has it.
Yeah.
I do have a few. Some of you are pretty good about it.
One with the
Okay. One with the menorah on the bottom. So I told you, look at the picture. We need copies. Here we go. Running out of copies. Here we go. Okay, we're good. So those over there. So on the front right column where it says Gemara Gem on the right side, they raised an interesting question that was raised in Yerushalayim. You know, in Yerushalayim, if you say hanachos a mitzvah, if you say hadlakos a mitzvah, then I have to make sure when I light it, everything is set up. So I have to have the potential for the oil. I have to have the oil that's going to have the potential to light for the full half hour or the candle. One of the questions about electric menorahs is the fact that because it's alternating current, this is for Morty. Because it's alternating current, I don't have enough fuel in it at the time that I light it. The same thing if I had a menorah that when I lit it, I only had enough for like a birthday candle, and then I put more oil in afterwards. Because hadlakos a mitzvah, it would not be the mitzvah. So the question came up. They have these boxes. You've seen them probably. They don't know so much in North America and Israel. These look like aquariums. These are really glass boxes with chimneys or terrariums, and they put the menorah in there and then they light it up. But to light it, they have to open the door. Now the reason this is a closed structure with a chimney is to make sure the wind doesn't blow it out. But if you were to leave the door open, right, what would happen? It would blow out. The reason if you put a menorah outside, it would never last. The only way it lasts is because you have a closed structure and you're able to vent it in order to get oxygen and put out the CO2. And make sure that the wind doesn't come in, because the chimney usually has got some kind of, top-on or something like that. A bath, right, to keep the air from blowing in. But the bottom line is, when you open that door to light it, that should detract from the ability of the candle menorah to burn, because if you left it open at that point, it's never going to burn. It's going to blow out. So this was a question that was asked a long time ago to Maharil Diskin, and he actually was very concerned about it. That's what this piece talks about. He suggested they put the door on the side. So if you have your menorah the long way, right, you put it on the side, put your hand in to light in front of it. So even if the door remained open, it wouldn't be for sure that the candle would go out. Rav C. Pesach Frank was asked about it a little bit later on, and he rules that if you just open and close the box, it's not really a big deal. Which is probably how most of us would probably think it would work out. But the truth is, if you think about it, if you just open and close it, it's not a danger the candles will burn out. The issue is, though, when it's open, it does have the potential for blowing out. So I just thought I put it there. That's the one I actually wanted to point out to you, and that's really the point of that. So there's a sidebar that may be more applicable to Eretz Yisrael than it is here. Okay, that's point number 2. The last thing we did last week, we talked about the bracha that we make, and we pointed out the bracha is a sheg shan b'savet or lahadlik ner shechanukah. That was the kicker. That was the final proof that proves the mitzvah is hadlaka, right? And that's the bracha. And then the Gemara says, if that's the case, that hadlaka is a mitzvah, and I'm moving now to Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, where we finished up last week. So a cheresh and shotav a katan, who if they were to light the menorah, is not going to do anything. And Isha, said the Gemara, this is the end of the piece, we get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines to the top. Isha vada matlika, and Isha definitely should light the candles. Then Rav Yeshua ben Levi, nashim chayavot b'ner Chanukah, shav hein ha'i b'yosu hanes. Because Rav Yeshua ben Levi said, women are chayav in the mitzvah of Chanukah because they also were involved in the miracle. Just, it's interesting, in Gemara Masechet Megillah and Daf Daled, they bring a number of halachot of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi that relate to Purim. There's like 6 or 7 in a row. One has to do with certain cities, where the Mekavas Koma. One has to do with what happened. You had a wall, and the wall came down, and you rebuilt it.
But the one together, but who remembers?
Right, we learned it together. But the one that he is probably most known for, and probably the most applicable, is Am Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Nashim Chayavot b'Mikra Megillah. Shav Heino you'll be also an ace. It's the same Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi making the same statement about Noshim with Mikra Megillah. And there's a whole discussion in the Achronim, actually even the more before the Rishonim, even the Malachas Gedolos and the Tosos and the Rishonim talk about it and others, whether when it says a woman is chayiv for reading Megillah, is it a mitzvah to hear Megillah or to read Megillah? And if the mitzvah is for the woman to read Megillah, can she read for men or not? Or can she only read for other women?
Right, Kol Isha.
Right. Not Kol Isha. No? It's not a Kol Isha. The Kol Isha may be a sidebar. But it's not really clear if cancellation.
She's mechayevet. Why wouldn't she be allowed to?
So that's the discussion is because you see that maybe her mitzvah level is a different kind of mitzvah level. Maybe some of the Achronim point out that there may be a mitzvah in hearing Megillah of Zechira and also Persume Nisa. Maybe she only has one of those types of mitzvot. Maybe she's not the same concept of arevut, of connectivity to the rest of the Jewish people. But it is a question that does come up, and that's why you'll find that a modern Orthodox synagogue, even if they have a woman's reading of the Megillah, will be reticent or hesitant from having women reading the Megillah publicly for men even today, based upon this discussion, where you find Rishonim that talk about this. Tosos seems to say, by the way, it should be fine. Tosos says that seems that mikan that isha can even be anoshim, but he quotes the halachas gedolos, which is a very early source. Halachas gedolos was written by either Rav Shimon Mikerawan or someone else in the time of the Gaonim, which so makes it about the 8th or 9th century possibly when the halachas gedolos was quoted. Halachas gedolos is one of the first, maybe the first attempt at organizing halachot after the Talmud. So if you wanted to read a halachic book, right, like the Shulchan Aruch eventually was a very good example of that. The Rambam was an excellent example of that. But the Rif was an example of where he took the Gemarot and simply pulled out the halachot part of the sugyot. Rif did not reorganize them, the Rambam did. But one of the very first examples was the halacha gedolot. The Talmud is finished, and anyone who studies Talmud knows how hard it is to goes topic to topic to kind of filter out what is the halachic bottom line. So that one of the first examples is the Sefer Halachot Gedolot, quoted frequently by Tosfot and quoted by other Rishonim who have great respect for it. So he says no. He says that a woman can only read for her type, mina. It's not meant pejoratively, it means other women. Avalola nashim, not for nashim. And he supports it with something he learns from a Tosefta, which is a little complicated to go into, about tumtum and androgynous. Who the tumtum is undefined gender, and androgynous has both kinds of exterior genitalia, what they are. But the halacha gedol feels that therefore a woman cannot read for men. This discussion comes up with Megillah. Discussion does not come up really for Hanukkah candles, and the reason is, why doesn't it come up for Hanukkah candles? Well, that's actually true. It does come later. It's a good point. But the Talmud is actually the same time. So, the answer is really Megillah is usually a mitzvah that we do. One person reads and everybody listens. This has a practical issue here. We don't, even if you have your own Megillah, and you read along, but there is a Baal Koreh, right? It's not usual that everybody's going to read it on their own. In fact, we say Barov Am Hadras Melech, right? With Hanukkah candles, on the other hand, we kind of bump it up to not just the mitzvah, which is Ner Ishu Beso, right? But we kind of say it should be everybody lights one candle, one menorah. Now, whether women are single, whether married women light together with their husband or not is maybe a subsection of that. But surely, if everybody's lighting their own menorah and they each go 1 to 8 every night, so a girl or an unmarried woman would light her own menorah the same way. They're not lighting for other people. Okay, but here's what does happen, and here's which is fascinating. That if you're traveling, I think I said this last week. If you're traveling and you as the man are traveling and unable to light, your wife can light at home for you. Okay, and we'll actually see that in the Gemara itself about one of the scholars who says when I usually I used to join in the lighting of my host. Once I got married, and it looks like he left his wife at home and went to the yeshiva. Okay, which may have been how things were done then. So he relied upon his wife who was lighting at home for him. So you see that it's not just that they're lighting equally. She's the one who's lighting for him, and that actually continues and so forth. Okay? Yes.
You said earlier women's Megillah. Do you mean women reading for
Yes.
women?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is such a thing?
Yeah, I believe they have the Shemaim. We don't have it in this show.
No, I never saw it. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, yes, it's very well accepted. Having a lot of modern Orthodox shuls. It's probably one of the more on the road to try to create experiences for women to do. It's probably one of the more tamer, accepted kinds of processes that women would have their own Megillah reading.
Okay. For women.
For women. Women would have their own Megillah reading for women. There's only one downside to it from a halachic perspective, is when it comes to Megillah, we say Brov Am Hadras Melach, more people together, right? So if the women have their own reading and the men have their own reading, then everybody's in two separate rooms. That's the only downside. But as I pointed out last week, I think that today we find, like in this show, in other shows, there are different Megillah readings. There's the one with the kids, the one without the kids, the one the noisy reading, the one you can hear, the one you can almost hear, the one you can hear a little bit, right? So it's and that works. So nobody says you all have to come together anymore, because it's just practically speaking there is a limit, because we can't use a microphone. So if you have to hear it.
They even let women study Talmud.
No, thanks for pointing it out. No, but I just
there was a time I seem
I never saw where the women would read Megillah.
Yes. So Shari Shemaim does it. It is done in Shari Shemaim.
Yeah, so I never saw it. That's all.
Okay. All right. So I'm just pointing out what I'm pointing out this discussion about this gender issue is really a Megillah issue. It's not really an issue about Hanukkah, even though it's the same person who says it and should have had the same kind of genesis and discussion and so forth.
When you say that she writes for him when he isn't there,
yeah.
So let's say he's got a kid over bar mitzvah. Doesn't the kid like instead of the mother?
I suppose. Yeah, I guess someone could light. Yeah. But there is no one over bar mitzvah. He's a newlywed. Okay. So you're actually going to have. I think it's going to come up in today's learning. I'm not sure if it's today or next week. Okay. Yeah. Yes, we're going to do it right now in a few minutes. Okay. And it's about Rav Sheshes. It's about Rav Zera. Rav Zera, and he must have just gotten married, so he didn't have a family. And if he did have a kid, the kid was still in a cradle or something like that, or surely not bar mitzvah. But there's no reason, by the way, that the child who's a teenager or a young man of 12 would have any more of a chiyuv than the woman. I'm not sure that it's necessarily you would choose the boy because he's a male more than the.
Over bar mitzvah, you said.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that you would choose the boy over bar mitzvah more than the mother to lead the hadlakas neiros. It's because that's what we were saying. Shein hoyu afhein hoyu biosanes.
Yeah, they have the same.
Right, correct. By the halachas Gedolos does point out the lashon. This is the lashon that's used for Purim. It says afhein, even they. It almost makes it sound like not just men, but even the women who are on. It looks like a tag along almost. Yeah. And then I think we pointed out last week the question is what women are really obligated in this because they were part of the miracle. There are really two basic interpretations. One is they are part of the actual redemption, the story of Yehudit and Holofernes, and maybe some other courageous women were there, so they're part of the change. And the other part is they were actually part of the decree was on them. Okay, there's a number of stories told in the contemporary writings. The women would throw their kids, would circumcise their children and throw them off the wall, because during the era before the Hanukkah story, the Syrian Greeks outlawed a number of laws, including Rosh Chodesh and Brit Milah. So it's a martyrdom story. Not sure if these stories are true or based upon retro legends.
What is the point? I understand.
What's the point?
You throw them off the thing.
The point is that you're committed to. The point is the point of Abraham. The point is that you do what God commands, even though it's suicide. They understood what the suicide actually was.
They did the suicide, though.
No, yes, they did the suicide, but this is all in lines with the martyrdom stories and events that take place in the phase of the Crusaders. So it's not quite sure if some of these stories may be post-dating or pre-dating what happens later on in the Middle Ages.
It's fine.
Okay, you have to understand back in the day when the government said something, it really meant it. Okay, and they said this is a decree. It's on pain of death. It was on pain of death. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to our Gemara then.
Mm-hmm.
So Amar Rav Sheshes, everybody have it where I am?
Yeah.
Amar Rav Sheshes, Achsanoi Chayv b'ner Chanukah. And Achsanoi is a guest, is Chayv in the midst of Chanukah. And Achsanoi is a guest who's staying in your house.
Your house, okay.
Staying in your house. And that's important because it means that he doesn't really have his own apartment. If he'd have his own apartment, if he'd have his own entrance, he may not be able to do what he's about to do in a moment, which is to join in together with the Balabas. So he doesn't have, he's traveling, he's on the road, he's your guest for the night. So what does he do? So he would, well, let's read the story. Amar Rabbi Zera, Mevesh Kavina Beirav. Initially, when I was a Beirav, I was in the house of the rabbis. Means I was in the base medrash. I was in the yeshiva. Mishnatafna beprite behadi yishpiza. I would join with a couple of prutos, a couple of small coins, together with my ushpiza, which is my ushpiza is my host. I know the ushpiza are the guests who visit you. They are the ushpiza, and the person who hosts them is the ushpiza.
Okay, rentee and rentor.
Yes, so lease, lessor, and lessee. Correct, exactly. So initially, when I was a young lad, and I stayed in the house of my ushpiza in the yeshiva, when I was in the yeshiva, because it's interesting, it's not just simply a European issue that they didn't have dormitories. Dormitories is a very unique kind of situation. Dormitories are a modern situation. They would have what's called kest, where they would stay with the families and they'd feed them. What we're talking about.
An Adam of Kiss.
Yeah, okay. Basad the Nasiba, after I got married, it is Basad Nasiba Itza, after I married a woman, my wife, so to speak, Isha, Amina, I said, Hashta vadelo tzrichna de kamadliki alai begav beitai. Now I don't have to put money in with the kitty to pay for the Hanukkah menorah where I'm staying, because they're lighting for me back at home, begav beitai, in my house. Begav beitai means his wife who's lighting for him at home. So right after I got married, there's no kids. It's not saying after I became my child became bar mitzvah. Right away, who would light the menorah? I relied upon my wife who was lighting the menorah itself. Okay, so this, by the way, is actually a very important halacha about achsanoi. As I told you, that the Achorim say that if you have your own separate house, separate apartment, a separate entrance, then the achsanoi, then the guest or the person should light themselves. This comes up, for example, in yeshivos today that do have dormitories. Right? Where do kids light the menorah?
So do they light them in dormitories?
So they actually, this is a very, very significant discussion, and it looks.
We used to light in the room in yeshiva.
That's exactly right. Looks like you should light in your room.
Light in
right?
the rooms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, correct.
Oh no, no, we didn't actually. We light it downstairs in the. We ate. There's a table. They put up a table.
Okay, so they're different. So the question really is what are you actually renting at the yeshiva? What is yours? Is your place where you sleep? They give you the dormitory, or is the place where they serve you the food as well? Do you have like a shtickle chazak on the actual cafeteria? So that's a discussion. This depends on the yeshiva you go to. I don't have to tell you what kind of issue it is. If they're hundreds of kids lighting menorahs and they're teenagers, and they may be less than ideally careful. Ideally, in the yeshiva that they do light, they're supposed to take turns watching the rooms to make sure they don't tip over, etc., etc., etc. Every once in a while, there's something burns down. Okay, well, I mean, but you're right. There are places who will light in the cafeteria.
So what do we do in the cafeteria?
Then you have about 30, 40, 50 menorahs.
So you have 30, 40, 50, but only one person needs to watch it.
The
kitchen staff needs to watch it.
I know in our house we have when we get to bed, it's like very hot.
However, it's okay. So you don't have to light necessarily one top shelf. You spread them out. Okay. But there's a number of tshuvot, including Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who says it's it's clearly better to light in the place that you sleep, and that's the achsanoi. This guy here, this Rav Zera's story was he was sleeping together with his host.
Right.
They gave him a bed. They put him near the fireplace, probably, or maybe not away from the fireplace. The family slept near the fireplace. But if people have their own room, it may actually be better, or halachically better, to light in the room itself, or to light outside the room. Probably outside the door would probably be the best place to light. Okay. Rav Right, so he quotes here actually from in the name of Rav Pinchas Scheinberg, from one of the great Rosh Yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. He was the Rav Pinchas Scheinberg, Zichron Levacha, used to wear many pairs of tzitzis. He was
50 pairs.
50 pairs of tzitzis, trying to every sheet. I don't know if everybody saw a picture of him. He was a tiny little guy, and he had all kinds of, one on top of the other. He looked like a football player. Right? But when you took him all down, it was a little skinny guy underneath it. So, anyways, he said that they can light in the Chadar Ochel where they're actually going to eat. Okay. So, and the other thing that the Achronim point out is today we try to be careful that everybody lights their own menorah. Right. Back in the day where it was Neri Shabbeso, it does not appear that everybody lit their own menorah, and even Sfaradim today one menorah for the entire family. But the minhag of the Ashkenazim, it's everybody lights their own. So if everybody lights their own, so it would make sense that even if you have an achsanah, you had a guest who's with you, he would light his own menorah. So that just changes things a little bit. So this may not be as applicable as initially it is, but what is important is that his wife is lighting for him.
Right.
Okay, so that really does come up. Once again, if a person were traveling, you could light. You could have your wife light if she were not traveling with you, or vice versa. If she's traveling and you're at home, which is, by the way, an interesting halacha, right? If you think about it, you don't have to be there for the menorah to be lit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
No one ever thought about that. Can you imagine?
If you can come home late, you can come home at 11 o'clock at night.
Yes.
Way past the time. Well, you can still light.
Yes.
But should your wife light on time, or should you wait?
So that's an excellent question. There's a story. Let me see if I can. There's a story with the Chafetz Chaim, whose Rebbe's name, the name of his Rebbe escaped me, but he learned a lot of Torah with this individual. And one year he stayed, and he learned his halacha. He learned his halachas with this rabbi. And one Chanukah he was staying with him, and the time to light came, and the teacher doesn't light. And the Chafetz Chaim is the man. He's the man of halacha. He writes the Mishnah Berurah, and they wait, and it's clearly getting late. He doesn't understand what's going on. And finally, he can't hold himself back. And he says to the Rebbe, "I understand. You told me all the halacha. You know that they're supposed to light when they're coming home from the shuk and the marketplace, and how late it is. Why are you waiting?" So he says, you'll see it on Chav Gimel Amud Bet, that the Gemara talks about the validity, the significance of certain mitzvot. And one of the significant things is shalom bayis. Certain mitzvot are important, like Shabbos candles trump certain other things in order to create shalom bayis. He says, that trumps it. Surely for Hanukkah candles, I should have shalom bayis when my wife is here, so I'm waiting for my wife to come home. She enjoys it very much. And I think that I agree with. So if she's home, or you're home, or you're together, I think it's better to wait. A family that lights together, eats together, has chanlatkas together or something. But there is room for shalom bayis to kind of delay it if you are waiting for your spouse, or vice versa, she's waiting for you. Okay. On the other hand, you are right. It is theoretically possible if you're coming home very late that she could light in front of him before you. You don't think that's going to impact upon your relationship, or vice versa. Maybe men are more broad shoulders. They won't be upset if their wife lights and they're not there, but it might be the other way around. I think I'll stop at this point. Okay. Let's go. Okay. So does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay. So Rabbi Yeshua, so this is the first Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. This was Rav Sheshes who brought down the story in the name of Rav Zera. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. This is the same Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi who said earlier about Nashim Chayavos Ner Chanukah. Kol Hashmanim Kulam Yafin L'Ner. This is not clear whether this is talking about Ner Chanukah or Ner Shabbos. Okay, so all the oils are good for the menorah. V'shemen zayis min hamuvchar. However, the best oil is the shemen zayis. And who says this? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Abaye. So Abaye said, "Mereish have mahader mar amishcha deshum shemi." So initially, I'm not sure who Mar is. Mar may be Rabbah. Initially, Rabbah would look for shemen of shumshmin, sesame oil. Why? Omar, he said, "Hai moshach nahara tfei." This actually pulls up the oil. It pulls up the oil best. In other words, it draws the oil, it gives a larger flame, or the oil is a thin oil, so it comes up the wick quicker. Kevin the Shama lahad Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi mahadar mishcha dezesa. He would try to get shemen zayis. Okay, so Tosfos discusses which kind of menorah this is. So if you look at the third Tosfos says Nira de ner Chanukah koi. Tosfos' opinion goes in ner Chanukah. Mishum taimud the masik nafshe the masik the nafesh nahorei tzvei gives a greater light. We'll learn a little bit later on. Avol lener Shabbos pshita shemen zayis mitzvah man muvchar. So this discussion was whether you should use Chanukah candles. However, Shabbos candles is clear to use shemen zayis. Why? Because it pulls it up better, and therefore everybody would agree you should use sesame oil because it won't go out. In other words, I guess I stopped too quick, so let me go back to the Gemara. Kevin the Shama Lahad the Rav Yeshua ben Levi Mahadra Mishcha the Zeis I took Shemen Zayid. Why Omar Hayt Solil Nahora Tvei? It's a clearer light.
Which is
the olive oil.
The olive oil.
Right, the olive oil. So in other words, I'll just read the Gemara again. I'll review it outside because I think I mashed it up a little bit. According to Abaye, he said the first initially, my Rabbah thought that they should use sesame oil for Hanukkah candles. Why? Because it pulls up the wick clearer, so it's going to kind of be a straighter, more consistent light. And then the end said, no, I learned from Yeshua ben Levi use Shemen Zayit. Right. But what's the advantage of Shemen Zayit? It gives a clearer, it doesn't flicker as much. It's a clear a light that even though the wick pulls it up quicker, sesame oil may not be as bright a light. So when it comes to brightness, Shemen Zayit trumps. Mm-hmm. When it comes to pulling up on the wick, or pulling up the wick pulling it up, the wicket up the wick, it looks like sesame oil is better.
That's tahina.
Fine. Okay.
No, the oil, yes. When you make tahina, you squeeze out sesame seeds. That's tahina.
Okay, take it.
And the husk that's over, you make
oil
challah.
has a stronger,
So
it's
a thick oil.
I'm sorry, I can't hear Tuvi. Once again.
It separates.
Maybe. It's possible.
Thick oil, that's all.
Okay. I don't know.
I just make a comment.
I can only tell you that in Eretz Yisrael, I've seen a lot of people use olive oil.
Yeah, we use olive oil.
But the olive oil they use there, I've noticed, says not for human consumption, or whatever the equivalent is in Hebrew. And it seems to be a much lighter kind of olive oil than the olive oil that is cold pressed.
It's with oil, you have the first pressing, which is squeeze out. Right. Then you want to squeeze out every little drop. So they use chemicals like a solvent to extract the oil.
I understand that, but I'm saying it looks like the oil is different than the oil that you're using for your salad.
They don't use food grade solvents. They use whatever they use.
Kinds of solvents.
Yeah, it's like the last kvetch.
Maybe.
The last little bit out. They use.
Okay. Anyways, the bottom line is it works, but here the key is what it comes out is that no one, according to Pshat of Tosfos, the other Acharonim disagree, the question was really about Hanukkah candles. No one ever questioned about Shabbos candles, because for Shabbos candles, the real issue is not about the brightness of the light, the issue is about the consistency. If you have a wick that doesn't pull up the oil, right, or the oil is going to kind of bug up at one point, you're going to have a problem on Shabbos. So there. On the other hand, on Hanukkah, you could always adjust it and fix it and relight it. On Shabbos, you can't. So no one ever said it was not should not use olive oil for Shabbos. The issue is really about Neros Hanukkah.
Rabbi Tarfon says you can only use olive oil
for Shabbos.
No,
that's our parak. Yeah. Which Mishnah is it? Did we learn it?
I don't think we got there yet.
I'm sorry, we don't have Mishnah's numbers. It's probably the first Mishnah. It's one of the Mishnayos.
When we learned Mamel Adliki, what did they say?
Rabbi Tarfon says you can light olive oil only.
Right, that's a little bit later on. We didn't get to that Mishnah. That's Rabbi Tarfon's opinion. I don't know that we paskin like that for candles. If we paskin like that for candles, you'd have a big problem using paraffin. Right, correct. We haven't gotten to that Mishnah.
So the first Mishnah we learned was just by what not to do.
Right, correct. And it also dealt with wicks. Correct. So we'll get to another Mishnah on Chaf Daled and Bet. Okay? But that's Rabbi Tarfon's opinion. That's not what we paskin like. Correct. Okay? I said you paraffin and other kinds of things, liquid paraffin you can use. Because it burns bright, because they are as equally good in terms of consistency on the wick as olive oil is. All I'm just pointing out is there's different reasons that are suggested that I have for different purposes. For Shabbos, you want to make sure you don't have a problem once you light it. Right. For Hanukkah, you want to get the clearest flame, even if it bugs up in the middle, you got to play with it. So the clearest, maybe the largest flame, I'm not quite sure what that means. It's salil, it's clear. Well, I guess the color of the light is bright. It burns at a higher temperature, perhaps. It's a whiter flame than it is perhaps of different oils, which may be more smokier, more yellow. I don't know. Okay, bluish. So don't try this at home. If you do try it at home, let us know which is better, sesame oil or olive oil. Okay. But you're right. There a number of plants have oil. Right,
Oh, yeah,
right.
sure.
Rapeseed,
canola,
which is canola. What do you call
corn
it?
oil,
Corn oil, peanut oil. Okay.
Yeah.
So the key, of course, to the shemen zayit is you can extract it on the cold press. Right. If you are doing daf yomi these days, anybody here doing daf yomi? Well, daf yomi now today's daf was actually about taking which oils you can use for the menorah, which oil you can use for the menachos. The oil from the menorah was, of course, the first press, right? So, and then the second and third press we use for the menachos. Why? Because God didn't want us to blow the house on oil. If you can only use the first press for all the menachos in the base of Mikdash, we would have no olives left on the market. The price of olives would go skyrocket. All right. Anyways, let's go back to our Gemara. So that's about oil itself. That's about shemen. Yom Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Kol Hashmonim Yafin L'Dio. This is unrelated to what we're doing. This has to do with producing ink.
Yeah.
Now, one of the ingredients is I guess some kind of oil, probably like a solvent or mixer. I'm not sure. I have no idea really what goes into modern dio, though that they use for Sifrei Torah and writing tefillin and mezuzahs.
Here it says ink is made of soot.
Yeah.
And oil or gum.
Right, so we're going to discuss in a moment. The Gemara doesn't even know, not quite sure what this oil is used for. Do they put the oil? Are they putting the oil to mix things around? Or are they putting the oil to make soot that they're then going to scrape off and put into the mix?
Maybe it's a kind of paint. Maybe it's not oil, ink. Maybe it's a kind of paint.
No, dio specifically means ink.
Okay. Because I know they use oil.
I don't know. I once saw them making ink. Many years ago when I was a young lad in Lower East Side, I kind of got the impression it was like, the way they used to make, witches would make a broth in the back room. But I never really saw what they were putting in. But I was actually looking for ink to fix the Sefer Torah, and the guy said, wait here. Okay.
Yeah, you make them. I'll make some for you.
Yeah, he was cooking on the stove. It was like this big cauldron. I said, okay. And he'd walk out of there with some dio to fix the Sefer Torah. Okay, at any rate, so it's kol hashmonim yafid l'dio v'shemen zayis ben amuvkar. All oils are good for dio, and however shemen zayis is best. The question is, what does this mean? Ibailu, what does this mean? It's actually, what are you using this for? The ink. What kind of oil would you use for ink? So the Gemara says, Ibailu. The question is legabel or la'ashen. Legabel actually means to mix, and Rashi tries to explain it, but I'm not quite sure exactly what they would do. They would mix it together. Would they mix it before, or la'ashen is actually to put it to burn it onto the side of a glass and then scrape off the soot that they would mix into the oil itself. So are they going to be gorer the shachruris, or are they simply going to be mixing it together or something like that? Not quite sure how it actually was done. So the Gemara says, Tashma, the Tani Rav Shmuel Bar Zutra, Kol Hashmonim Yafin L'Dio, B'Shemen Zayis Ben Amuvchar, Bein L'Gabo, Bein La'ashin. No matter what you're doing with it, whether you're going to mix it, using the oil into the mix, or you're going to use it into the soot, the best oil is still going to be Shemen Zayis. Okay? Next piece, once again, I got a little bit off topic here. Rav Shmuel Bar Zutra, Masni Hachi, we have a different version. Kol ha'ashonim yafin l'dio. All the smoke is good for dio. In other words, the same way they put smoke into scotch. All right, they put smoke into the dio. It was one of the blackening agents. V'shemen zayis ben amuvchar. So all this very clear. This is clear. It's talking about the ashan. So all of the smoking, whichever you would use as the fuel, you can use for dio. It's not as specific as it is when it comes to certain ingredients that are put into the dio to make it indelible. You can use any kind of smoke to give it a black color. Okay, that's all I can tell you. Rafuna kol asrafim yafin l'dio. Sraf is sap. This is, once again, unrelated. This is topic off the topic off the topic. This is about using the sap for the dio. Kol asrafim yafel dio v'saraf ketef yafel mikulam. And the tree that's called ketef is the best kind of sap that is used to mix into the dio to give it some type of consistency. Remember, the dio is going to be indelible. The dio is also going to not be too loose. It's not going to be absorbed into the parchment. It sits on top of the parchment. It's a raised kind of ink, so it was a specific way to make it itself. Okay, so far so good? Yep. Good. Okay, let's go on. Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi. This is really easy. Amar Rav. Hadmadlik ner Chanukah, ner shel Chanukah, tzarich levarech. If you light the ner of Chanukah, you make a bracha. Obviously, that sounds axiomatic. True, but the next line is Rav Yirmiyah Omer, haro ner Chanukah, tzarich levarech. If you see the ner Chanukah, and it means it's a situation where you're not going to actually light the Chanukah menorah later on. For some reason, you don't have a menorah. Remember, that doesn't, in a society where lights and fuel were fairly expensive, that could have been a real possibility. You lived at home in the dark. Okay, hard for us to imagine. Today it could be that you could be traveling. People, I've told you, take an overnight flight to Eretz Yisrael on Hanukkah, which does happen. It'd be if you leave at 5 o'clock, for example, if the flights here in Toronto leave 5 o'clock and land in Eretz Yisrael the next morning, or 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you miss a whole night. There's no way to light menorahs Chanukah.
On the plane.
There's no way to light on the plane without getting thrown off the plane. And there's probably nowhere to light. I'm not sure on the terminal if you could actually, maybe depending on how delayed the plane would be, you might be able to just make it.
You buy those little battery LED things. Maybe.
So that's a very large discussion whether you can use LEDs for surely are not light.
Because there's no heat.
Because there's no heat whatsoever. The question is, let's say you had some kind of battery pack with an electric light, like the old flashlights. Maybe you don't need more than the flashlight to make this work, because you only need one light.
Right.
So that would solve some of the problem and not solve some of the other problems. One of the problems is it's supposed to look like the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. So the fuel itself should mimic the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. The battery pack, a battery does not mimic it. On the other hand, a battery pack is clearly advantageous over plugging it in the wall, because it has all the fuel that it's going to need. Right? That's a complicated question. Okay. Ask a rabbi if it happens. Or the other hand is, you might be the candidate for this bracha, the bracha of seeing a Chanukah menorah. Though the truth is, the Chachamim say we don't do this anymore today. People don't make brachas on seeing menorahs with the intention that they're not going to light. Everybody lights. So I'm not quite sure if it happens, the situations where you would light. I remember, years ago in Kennedy Airport, seeing Chabad used to have set up lighting menorahs. People, if I didn't see it, people told me surely about it. I didn't understand how it could be. People told me they would change planes there. People here would tell me. So I never really saw it, but I heard people said they would take a plane to New York. There was a time when El Al didn't fly direct. They take to New York, get off the plane. There was a Chabad set up with their, fill-in stand and everything stand that you want. They had menorahs and people would light. I recall hearing about this in the 80s, but I never understood it because people are not sleeping there. How could you light in the airport? You're going to be there for a few hours.
Doing it for the same purpose they
You
do
do it the
with
best
all
you
these,
can, because you can't do it.
city halls in front of JRCs. Maybe they do it for display.
Okay, maybe.
But do they make a bracha when they
So that's a question. In City Hall they do. When you light publicly, you do. This is not really public lighting, unless they felt that was public lighting. If they got their stand up set up in the airport and everybody's watching, it's a public lighting. But once you lit publicly, the first person lights. You can't say that everybody that comes by 5 minutes later and lights another menorah is lighting a public lighting.
No, but what about
I don't know.
this bracha that they talked about?
Yeah.
You have some Jews, I suspect, who don't like menorahs all the time, or not every
Correct.
single night, or whatever. So let's say that you're standing outside with whoever, a Jew like that, and you're talking about it, and there is a menorah that he sees lit there.
Right.
So we could say a bracha. It sounds like you would be, I don't know what to say exactly, but it sounds like you say, it's like you say to them, say a bracha.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Say a bracha.
Correct. So that's, I guess
so.
so.
You could perform the mitzvah maybe right there by saying a bracha.
Correct. Okay. All right. I'm just saying what I read about is that the poskim say today it's not really done that much. And possibly the reason may be is here, you say, well, what has changed? Why would things change? So what has changed? There is one thing that changed with Hanukkah, and that is that Hanukkah, the original place we find Hanukkah is in Megillat Tanit. All the holidays in Megillat Tanit became null and void. So it's possible this is like, that may have been part of the original lighting of the menorah, to see the menorah being lit. It's now more lighting the menorah itself that you're going to do the actual mitzvah. So that's what some of the poskim talk out.
This is also the assumption that the wife is not lighting to the...
That's correct. The couple is traveling to Israel, right? Or a single guy is traveling to Israel. So I'm saying that is a possibility. Many years ago, many years ago, when I was in Pennsylvania, I took a group into New York for a day, and we chartered a bus, and we actually on the way back we lit a menorah in the bus. It was like you light publicly. I still remember the bus driver had a bit of a fit because and we also had to make sure to tie it down because every bump the bus, the menorah would start flying. But you can do that. But that's like lighting in shul. And these people, chances are the people, when they got home that night, they probably were not going to light them on their own. This is the type of people who went on the tour. So it's better. You're right. So if there's no other choice, maybe it can work to see a menorah being lit by someone else as you drive by. If you fly over Toronto, look down and see menorahs as you take off, maybe you can make the bracha. Tongue in cheek. Okay.
If you travel, it's better that your wife lights for you?
Yes. Then if you light yourself?
Yeah, or you see her?
Well, the question is, it's better your wife lights for you. It's better your wife lights for you than for you just to make the bracha seeing a menorah. I said that's the unusual part. The bracha is being made, the candles are being lit, and you don't get to see it. It's just a fascinating idea, right? You say, well, can I make the bracha shas anisim when I see the menorah? But no, it's already been lit by someone else. So it's a very, very strange halacha. Right? It's kind of like saying, the old joke about the Jew who pays someone else to fast for him on Yom Kippur, right? And then you never heard the joke. You never heard the joke, and then in the middle of Yom Kippur, he sees the guy who he paid to fast, and he sees he's eating. He says, "What are you eating for? I paid you to fast." He says, "Yes, but Chaim also paid me to fast. I'm eating for him now, not eating for you. For you, I'm still fasting." So the answer is, it looks like very strange. Like, so I'm not doing the mitzvah. My wife is doing the mitzvah. It's being lit at home. I don't even get to see it. Like, okay, send me a video, send me a WhatsApp, show me the picture, show me the menorah. But I'm not there. But that's the halacha. The halacha actually seems to be based, and this is the real issue, or the real answer. The halacha is based upon lighting at home. It's a home mitzvah.
Yeah. But the interesting question would be, let's say you're traveling, and I know people who travel and do take a menorah with them, okay? Like a small one.
Right, yes.
Let's say you were traveling, your wife is still home. Would it make sense? You lit a candles right where you are, and your wife figures she's also chayav. Right. That's an interesting. So
I'm not sure it's a bracha achrona. Correct. I've seen that shaila come up. Or the question really is, what if you don't know if she's lighting?
Yeah.
That's less frequent a question to come up today in an age of communication than it was years ago. But that could come up. But the real issue is, if you are traveling, it is somewhat complicated to light menorah.
Must it be your wife, or can it be anybody? Someone have some.
It means your family, someone in your family. Can't be your friend. Can't be a friend who lives down the block. You can't ask someone to come by your house and light the menorah in your front window. It has to be someone near Isha Beso. So in this case of Rav Zera, it was his wife at home. And that makes a whole lot of sense. Let's say he had a kid who was over bar mitzvah, the kid could light a menorah. Right? That would make sense as well. But it has to be someone within that house, be a part of that household. However the household is made up. I think, for example, if you had a grandparent living there who lives there consistently, that's part of the household. So, yeah. But I'm saying, but you're not there. But the mitzvah is being done for you. So it's just the way it's set up. It's Neri Shebeso. It sounds very, very strange. What does Rashi say? Where's the Rashi here? Haro mavarach shnayim. Okay. Rashi just makes one comment. I'm saying haroa. I'll just read out a couple of Rashis. Haroa. However, b'shok v'ro be'halacha-theory doleg. You see, when a person passes walking in the marketplace and he sees in one of the yards there's a menorah burning, he makes the bracha of Shas Nisim. Umatzati b'shem Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Yehuda shamar b'shem Rabbeinu Yaakov. The lo huska bracha zu l'misha lo hidlik bebeito adayin o lioshe b'sfina. The bracha is only meant for a person who didn't light at all in his house yet, or a person who's sitting in a sfina, which means he has no opportunity to light, because in the sfina the locations were fairly limited and probably packing was very limited, and they're probably on a wooden boat. They probably didn't like to make candles. So the Achronim point out that Rashi seems to say you didn't light yet. From Rashi, the impression is you can make the second bracha of Shas Nisim before you get home. The other Rishonim say it means you're never going to light at all. So then you can only say it. Not that you didn't light now. Not that I'm walking in the marketplace and I see it being burned. The first part of Rashi is even more radical. First part of Rashi seems to say that even if I lit at home and then I saw the menorah burning in the marketplace, I make a bracha.
Another bracha.
Another bracha. That's what Rashi seems to say. But that's surely not accepted. But the real pshat is, the real assumption is I'm not going to have an opportunity to light the menorah. I can't do it, but I can make a bracha Shas Nisim. I don't know. Maybe in the Chabad stand, the Chabadniks slept there at night. I don't know. They slept in the back room. So for them it was the place, and maybe they could make the bracha. I don't know. They don't understand the JFK story. Okay. So let's go back to the Gemara. Rav Chia Barashim, Rav Hamadlik Nesha Chanukah Tzarech Levarech, Rav Yom Yom Arod Ner Chanukah Tzarech Levarech. What do you say? I'm Rav Yehuda. Yom Rishon. This is stuff that's going to be very easy for you. Yom Rishon, I hope. Haroah Mevarech Shtayim Umadlik Mevarech Gimel. On the first day, if you're not going to light a menorah, as we will say it is, or as Rashi said, you didn't light a menorah, you're going to make two brachas. You're going to make the bracha Shas Nisim and the bracha Shechianu. And the person who's Madlik makes three brachas, right? The bracha of Lahadlik Nesha Chanukah, Shas Nisim, and Shechianu. Mikan ve'elach madlik mavarach shtayim v'ro mavarach achas. And the subsequent nights, once again, you only make two. You who light a menorah, and you don't say Shechianu, and the person who sees it, you leave. It says only one. So now the Gemara says, which one do you leave out? Very funny question. I was giving you the example of which one you say. My mamayed. Which one do you leave out on the subsequent nights? Mamayed zman. You leave off Shechianu. Okay, so the Gemara says v'nimot neis. Maybe I should leave off Shas Nisim. Why do I leave off only Shechianu? Or why Shechianu? Every night is Shechianu. Right? I'm happy. It's a celebration every night. It's not like Pesach that you celebrate coming out of Egypt. Right, or any of the other holidays which you celebrate at once. If we understand that there's a mitzvah every night to light the menorah, and the miracle was, it's a miracle for light, they should be Shechianu too. So v'nimot neis, the Gemara says, neis kol yumei iseh. There was a miracle every night, so I want to say Shas Nisim. So the one that I leave out is really the Shechianu, which is the first time that I'm doing something, I'm really happy. The second night, I'm not as happy. I already got my gifts, okay? Already gave out the Chanukah gelt. My mavarech, where the brachas are. And this is, once again, this is axiomatic, Mavarach, but this is the Gemara that has the source for it. This is really the source. Mavarach Asher Kishon Mitzvah Tzivan L'Hadlik Ner Chanukah, that he commanded us, he sanctified us with his mitzvos, and he commanded us to do the Ner of Chanukah. By the way, it's interesting, we don't say Asher Notan Lano Mitzvah, Asher Kishon Mitzvah Tov. Talk about sanctifying ourselves. The Baruch Hu allowed us, that's really the purpose of Jew in the world, to find sanctification in the word of Hashem or the mitzvah of Hashem. And it gave us the mitzvah to light Ner Chanukah. So the Gemara asks the obvious question, where did God command us to light Chanukah menorah? There's no place, right? What is the Torah reading for Chanukah? What's the Torah reading for Chanukah? What's the Torah reading for Chanukah? Anybody? Dedication of the Mishkan. Right, which actually takes place in Nisan, but the work in the Mishkan may have been completed at Chanukah, or the fact that the dedication of the Mishkan in the beginning of Nisan is related to dedication of the Beis HaMikdash. That is, and the very last day of Chanukah, we stretch out the laning to include the beginning of Baloscha, which is Baloscha Saneros, which is really talking about lighting the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, right? In the Mishkan, I say in the Mishkan. The Ramban and others say it also somewhat of a hint for the descendants of Aaron, who would be the Chashmonaim. So where is Vehechan Sivanos Rav Avaya Amar Milo Tasur Mikol Asher? What's the whole pasuk? Milo Sasu Min Adavar She'Gid Lecha Yamin Osmal. I'm sorry.
If the Kohanim of your age or whoever, the judges in your age tell you what to do, right?
Right, you shall not turn los asumin, don't turn right or left from what they tell you. Right, which, by the way, the famous drasha is, even if they tell you to turn left when it's right, and if they tell you to turn right when it's left, even if you think it makes no sense, you nonetheless follow the takanas of Chazal. There you go, for anyone who ever questioned whether we should do these things. So, lo tasur is a general mitzvah, by the way, it means that every mitzvah d'Rabbanan would fall under this category. Yeah. So every rabbinic mitzvah has a catch-all phrase that it makes it one of the 613. So you are following the words of the sages who decreed this rabbinic mitzvah, and which, by the way, includes everything. You know,
it adds up to a lot more than 613.
Right. We talked about Shabbos. We've talked about Shabbos. There are 39 malachos. Then we talked about their avos and toldos, and then the rabbinic extensions. There's shvus. There's muktzah. You say, it's just muktzah. The answer is it becomes one of the 613. That's one answer. Rav Nechemia Amar. Rav Nechemia brings another pasuk. There's a pasuk taken from the end of Dvarim. Shalavicha v'yagedcha zikenecha v'yomulach. This is from, I think, Hazina or something. So it's less of a direct mitzvah. It just simply says, you know what, your elders will tell you what to do. If your elders told you that, then you're going to follow what the mitzvah is. Okay. Okay, we got time to do a couple more lines. Let's do it. Let's see if we can go for it till the 2 dots. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the assumption is that you would make that if it's a rabbinic mitzvah, you're still going to do it. It has validity, and you're going to
say that Hashem ordered it.
And you're going to make a bracha. Okay? So Masiv Rav Amar asked the following question: Hadamai what is demai? Demai is produce that you bought from an Amoretz.
Right.
Okay, and the concern was the Amoretz may have taken truma but didn't take maestros.
Right.
So you're going to take off the maestros yourself, even though you're not sure what happened. Right. So Chazal made a rule that you'll do it, and you'll see in a moment whether you make a bracha. Hademaima, if you can use it for Erev Chatzero, Erev Tchumen, you can use it mishnashman for Erev Chatzero. So even though it's still demai, you can still use it for these purposes, because it is and it isn't. We can use it for certain things. And mavarchim alav, and you can use demai for the hamotzi. If you made bread out of challah out of it, and it's still demai, you didn't take the trumas and maestros off yourself. You're relying upon the Amoretz. You can use it for the motzi, umizamnin alav, and you can use, if it's the mai for wine, you can use it for the berchas hamazon, umafrish, and then one more piece of this, and here's the key, umafrishin also arum, and you can do the hafrasha of the mai when you're naked, stark naked. Okay, please no comments. Ubein hashmoshos, and you can actually also take the mai bein hashmoshos, because bein hashmoshos we're not sure Shabbos, right? It is and it isn't. It's rabbinically Shabbos. So the question is really from one point of this whole long discussion about Demai, that you can take off Demai when you're naked. It sounds like something you wouldn't do, but it's really produce. Right? Maybe you're wearing a good suit, you don't want to get your good suit full of I don't know, corn or grain or whatever it is.
What are they trying to prove here?
So says the Gemara, V'amrid kol midrabanan boy bracha, and if you say that every drabanan you're going to make a bracha, as we just saw, that you make a bracha for Chanukah candles, hacha ki koi arum hechem avarch. If you're naked, how can you make a bracha? Everybody knows you can't make a bracha naked. You can do whatever you want naked. You can take off the mai, because that's more of a utilitarian thing, but it surely shows you can't make a bracha. Why can't you make a bracha naked? Your camp will be holy, so therefore invoking God's name when you're in the altogether is surely not appropriate. You don't need a pasuk to tell you that, but you understood that. And it's not going to be you won't be holy. So therefore, what do you see from this? Here's the question. It sounds like a funny kind of question. If you say that a drabanan like Chanukah candles, you make a bracha, so how come it looks like you don't have to make a bracha for Tamai? So please don't say, well, let's put a clothes on. So Amar Abaye, so Abaye says as follows: a mitzvah midrabanan that is for sure a mitzvah to do, you make a bracha. Safek the devreim lo boy bracha. Okay, if it's a safek in the mitzvah, the question in the mitzvah, you don't make a bracha. Okay, so in other words, that make clear. So Chanukah it was a decision to light menorah. Here, the Demai, you don't know if the Amoritz took off or didn't take off. Right. So because of a safek, you're going to take it off, but that's not a reason to make a bracha. So one more line here. So Gemara says, wait, you tell me a rabbinic mitzvah that's a suffix, you don't make a bracha. Yom Tov Sheni, the suffix the devreim hu u'bai bracha. Well, second day of Yontif, we do make a bracha on everything we do, and yet it's surely only a suffix Yontif because we know what the calendar is, or they didn't know what the calendar was. So the Gemara says, "Hasam ki'echid lo l'zilzul le'bei." But that's because we don't want people to denigrate the mitzvah. So the rabbi said, if you're going to keep a second day of Yontif, you're going to decide to make the brachas and all the kiddushes and everything else on the second day of Yontif. But the real answer is on a suffix, in normal suffix, and this is not just a suffix on the Yontif, suffix on this produce itself. So that's one answer. Second answer is it's almost the same, but it's a little bit better. Rav Amar, Rov Amearis Me'asrim Ahain. When it comes to Demai, it's not an equal suffix. Okay, 9 out of 10 Amayaretz or 8 out of 10 Amayaretz do take Meiser, but we're not quite sure that 100%. We know that 100% don't. So the small people who don't, we say take off the Demai, take off the Meisers themselves. That's not a reason to make a bracha. That you're just covering it, because in all likelihood it was done, but they built like saying, for a chumrah is not a mitzvah. Chumrah is an additional piece, but you wouldn't make a bracha simply on a chumrah, you'd make a bracha on a drabanan. Okay, we'll stop.
Do we make a bracha on Demai or don't we?
No, we don't.
We don't.
Okay.
But I think the question of Yom Sheni is a really...
It's a much larger question.
Yes, a much larger question.